This is a ridiculous idea to predict a specific release date for the world's least predictable video games company, but I'm going to try, step by step, looking in detail at the calendar for the year ahead and Nintendo's history, to work my way down to the likeliest date for the next Nintendo console to release. One important caveat, just in case anyone's going to query this, I'm going to define the next Switch as any kind of substantial hardware upgrade. There's a non-zero chance the next 12 to 18 months that Nintendo decides to release some kind of iteration on the original Switch. Remember, 2017 they followed up the launch of the original Switch with the new 2DS XL, and they may have similar plans to keep the OG Switch going as a cheaper model. Nevertheless, this video will only be predicting the date of the sequel system. First, we have a good idea of the general window. Recent leaks have made a 2024 release unlikely, unless you assume that Nintendo are playing some kind of deep cover reveal plan. Similarly, the rumours strongly converge around spring 2025, but then they also converged around late 2024, and look how that turned out. Still, forecasting isn't about fringe cases, but trying to take a central likelihood at the time. Taking into account the age of the Switch, its downward sales trajectory, the likelihood that the new system has already had one internal delay, which obviously affects all the third parties involved in Nintendo, and the pressure that any further delays would inevitably place on Nintendo's stock price, I'm going to assume the first 5 months of 2025 is likely. In fact, I'm going to forecast a 90% probability that the Switch 2 releases in the first 5 months of 2025. They have brought forward releases in the past, so Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is the most notable, but there's a world of difference between bringing forward the release of a game and the release of an entire console, which will also have a whole suite of games attached with it. Similarly, I think Nintendo will want to get out quite a few big games before they hit their summer season, which probably makes June a little late. But January to May gives us 151 days to play with, so still a lot to work through if we're going to find the specific release date of the next Nintendo console. We know more than we think about Switch 2 though. First of all, Nintendo has taken to Fridays as their release days for Switch titles and iterations. This wasn't the case historically, but since they started coordinating global releases, which I'm sure they will want to do with a machine as anticipated as the Switch 2, Friday has been their preferred date almost all the time, and there's no reason to assume this would continue. It gives the company a full working week to build to the launch, and then a first weekend of sales right up front. We can also rule out some periods completely. January is too close to the holiday season. In 2017, Nintendo had their big blowout reveal on the 13th of January, exactly 7 weeks prior to the launch of the system. Even assuming they wanted to compress the hype cycle window down to 6 weeks, that puts the earliest release date on the 14th of February, and if February seems very early, remember that the Nintendo 3DS was also a February launch. Other dates to be aware of: 18th of April is Good Friday, where not all countries will have the same working hours, and this might limit sales potential. In Japan, there are 2 further national holidays to consider in our time frame, the 24th of February and the 20th of March. A little bit further on, the 29th of April and the 5th and 6th of May are also Japanese national holidays that fall in weekdays. All things considered, I think Nintendo would want to release before a holiday rather than after it. People having downtime is more time for people to be out, buying games, playing games, or on the internet, posting about games. It's also going to be an exhausting period for Nintendo's employees, and so scheduling their year so that the holidays come in the lull period immediately after release just makes more sense. Generally in the past, Nintendo has steered clear of the 2 weeks after a holiday, but there is one exception. The Switch Lite released on September 20, after a weekday national holiday on the Monday. Still, many of the 2025 holidays fall right in the middle of the week, and the Switch 2 launch will be orders of magnitude bigger in scale than Switch Lite. In light of this, I'm going to knock out weeks which contain national holidays in Japan, and also Easter, with one exception, because I think the week of the 28th of February, where the holiday's on the Monday, still is plausible given the precedent of Switch Lite. So as a result, it looks like we've narrowed the pool down from hundreds of potential dates to just 12. Now though, things are going to get a lot trickier. Nintendo has released systems all over the calendar, and it has used the April to June quarter to release systems before, including revisions to the 3DS, and most famously, the release of the original Game Boy. In recent decades, however, there are just 2 big windows it's favoured for its major hardware iterations. The original 3DS and Switch launched just before the end of the financial year in February and March respectively. The Wii, Wii U, and the Switch OLED, by the way, released in the holiday window October to December. Ultimately, I don't think Nintendo are so wedded to this release window that they would prioritise releasing in February or March over releasing when the games are ready and the system is done, but nevertheless I do think that a February or March release has to be the central estimate, and so I'm going to say that I think there is a 50% likelihood that the next system releases on one of these 6 dates, the 14th, 21st or 28th of February, or the 7th, 14th or 28th of March. So having thought about these key dates, we can rule out which dates have something going for them. I think there are 4. The first is Nintendo's investor update in February. Yes, there's a good case for releasing in February, as it gets the new system out of the door and allows Nintendo to rack up more sales in the 2024-25 financial year, which looks like it could be a rough one otherwise if they're reliant heavily on a declining OG Switch. Nevertheless, from an investor point of view, little meaningful data would come back so quickly, and Nintendo would have to rush to present this information to investors anyway, which would add unnecessary extra stress for their management at an already hectic time. The second key date, therefore, is the last Friday of the financial year, which has been a release date for major titles before, notably Animal Crossing New Horizons in 2020, Yoshi's Crafted World in 2019, and Monster Hunter Rise in 2021. Pushing Switch 2 to the end of the financial year has the dual benefit of giving a very strong start indeed to the next financial year. It's a strong possibility, but there are 2 other dates that I think may have an even stronger significance. The first is March 3rd, the Switch's 8-year anniversary, and the second is March 10th, better known as Mario Day. And I know Nintendo is hugely inconsistent with how it acknowledges these holidays, but there is a very, very good reason indeed to think that this year will be a huge one for them, because 2025 is the 40th anniversary of The Plucky Plumber, and so celebrating that date with, almost inevitably, new entries in the Mario Kart or 3D Mario series seemed like exactly the kind of hype launch that would give the Switch 2 a rocket-propelled start. In fact, I think it's pretty much locked on that one of these games will release in the March window, and one of these games will release in September around the precise date of the 40th anniversary. My hunch would be that they will launch with Mario Kart in March, and they will release the 3D Mario game in September. But either way, I think we'll get one of these at the beginning of the year, and one of these at the end. At the very least, I think Nintendo will want to have their system in stores by Mario Day, and therefore on Mario Day they can see people on social media showcasing their latest adventures in the Mushroom Kingdom. Therefore, I'm going to judge that the later dates are less likely and narrow it down to just these 4. 14th of February, 21st of February, 28th of February, and the 7th of March. And I think that a Valentine's Day release seems unlikely since there's likely to be less media space, and of course the Emperor's birthday weekend is on the 23rd of February, and that's also going to clog up oxygen that Nintendo would rather have dedicated to the release of the Switch. After all, Emperor Naruhito appears on the balcony and throngs of people are allowed a rare chance to enter the palace grounds. That's going to be on television, and if there's any other news cycle going on, then it's going to crowd out Nintendo completely. So, let's take it down just to the 2 dates we've got left, the 28th of February and the 7th of March. Obviously, with so many potential dates, just 2 can't be an absolute likelihood, but I'm still going to give it a 30% chance that one of these 2 is the release date. Now, March is the current hype, but with so long until the release of the system, I think there is plenty of time for plans to change back and forth, as even Nintendo may not yet have completely nailed down their schedule. So ultimately it comes down to whether the weekend prior to Mario Day is going to launch the Switch 2, or whether it would be better as a second round of hype after the system's initial release. My hunch is that 2 bites of the cherry is better than 1, 3 if you count the 8-year anniversary of the Switch, which falls right in the middle of the 28th of February and the 10th of March. So by going with the 28th of February, they get an initial hype explosion, followed a week or so later by another excuse to promote their games. Therefore, my prediction is that the 28th of February will be slightly more likely as the release date, and that's the date that I'm going to stick with. But this is your chance for absolute and unadulterated glory. Get into the comments and tell me your prediction. If you get it spot on, the bragging rights will be truly epic and you get featured in a future video. You'll also want to subscribe so you remember to come back. Thank you so much as ever for watching, and check out these videos on screen for more Nintendo forecasts.